Okay. Freedom in the Galaxy. It's a game I love and hate. I love what it tries to do. It is such an in-depth, large scope, trying to capture that character-based side of this rebellion. Yeah, sort of Star Trek-y, but okay. I think the universe is better than the Star Trek universe. I'm more excited by it. There aren't any silly little Ewoks or anything like that in it. I hate it because of how it always plays out for me, which is that the rebels might seem like they're kind of starting to get a little bit of an advantage through the game. Usually I've seen that they get knocked out pretty early. They start taking some heavy attrition. Turag is especially risky there because he's not got a very good spaceship. The ability of the Imperials to grow, once it comes to about turn 5, you've been through most of the galaxy, you're seeing the same events coming up. It gets kind of boring. If you stick on the same planet for a while with whoever you have, you're seeing the same monsters coming up, but you still have to look them up every time in the guide in order to see what you have. Now maybe some cheat sheets for that kind of information would work, but I don't know. Not so sure about that. There's a general impression that this is a very unbalanced game. That the rebels have a hard row to sow, as it were, or to hoe, or never mind. I've probably made that worse. My impression is that if you really analyze this game, you could do very well with the rebels. But there's a problem. Let's go to the components, because one of those components is that problem for me. The map, all these little star systems, it's very pretty to look at. It's a good way to convey some of the key information, like maybe the loyalty level, the PDBs. But there's a lot of other information on here. What races are present where, the coup values, just so much coming in that you need to kind of be aware of everything to, I think, play optimally. I'm not someone who likes to study a lot. As evidenced by the fact that I didn't bother to read the rules before playing. But it really feels like if you want to have a chance with the rebels, you need to do that kind of effort, or play against a much weaker Imperial player than I think I'm capable of being. So the map serves as a really painful aspect, and I don't think there's a way you can convey this much information. You know, it's not like, here's the East Front, look, there's the mountain ranges. You kind of can drink that all in as long as it's not a point-to-point map. This, like a point-to-point map, but with tremendous amounts of information everywhere, really doesn't intuitively reach out to me and say, here's the terrain, understand it. You know? So that's definitely a factor to it. You just have to know too many things, too much. You have to know stuff like my little cheat sheet of what actions work in what locations best. Meanwhile, you have to kind of play a memory game with the Imperials, try to remember where their forces are that you've seen, and kind of watch the Imperial player as he's moving to have an idea where he might be conglomerating significant force. You have to remember a lot of little things like, oh, every other turn I can't be sitting on the wrong planet because then taxation happens and there's a possibility the PDB can go up and I'll get caught there. It's a hard job for the rebels, is what I'm saying. If they had an even chance, it would still be a very hard work to do well with them. I think it is possible. I think the lessons that I learn at the end of every time I play it and forget the next time I pull it out are somewhat valid. I think that it is possible to coordinate groups, but you have to ignore the advice that the game gives you. Right in the game rules, and the very design of the game, and I've said this before, all lead you to this kind of, oh, I should use all these different mission types. Well, actually, there's a whole bunch of them that aren't terribly useful. For example, Subvert Troops. The way I play the Imperials, Subvert Troops does very little good because there are almost never Imperial troops on the planet with you. Hey, that's an option there. As the Imperial, if you do start using Imperial troops to search more for the Rebel characters, and that tends to be kind of a waste of time, because the best you get is a shootout with a squad, and unless you have a really potent Imperial unit there, that's not going to be terribly helpful. So, I don't find that there's much reason for the Rebels to be playing the Subvert Troops option there. Well, what about for the Imperials? Well, even less there, because if the Imperials are playing well and they've got the Rebels on the run the whole game, they're not going to be in a position where they have to cope with that. I did a lot. Well, assassinate. Bad move. I mean, seriously, if you send one guy off on his own on a mission like that, well, he's probably going to get killed by natives or by monsters. If you send a bunch of people, there's a good chance they all get caught or killed. The Start Rebel Camp. I did a lot of this. I think it's a horrible mission. It may help keep the Imperials off their guard a little bit, but they can generally slam enough troops into an area eventually when their strategic assignment comes around to be able to crack that. Coups, a riskier form of diplomacy, but they're kind of cool. I'll do them sometimes, but diplomacy's your big mission here. Summon Sovereign, yeah, if you got extra guys to do that, what the hell, why not? He might help you at some other point in the game. Free prisoners. I've done that. We didn't see anybody get captured this game. I don't tend, again, because I'm not sending squads down to cope with the rebels, I don't tend to capture them very often. Game characters, that's a biggie. You want to fill out your groups of characters to the maximum that you can so that you can do more missions. You don't really worry about the search level, especially playing against me, but I don't think you want to anyway. Steal enemy resources, really rarely done. This may be one of the very few times I've ever played it in this game. Gather information, this is a biggie. This is one way the Imperials can deal with it. However, they can only do it where enemy characters, enemy-controlled planets, well, planets they don't control, or enemy military units are present. Well, enemy characters can be present too. And it allows you to start pinning down where the secret base is. If you capture characters, there's a question prisoners mission as well, which is even more valuable. So you start torturing your prisoners and getting information from them, and that's very valuable. Spaceship Quest, this is one of those once every 4 or 5 games, maybe, whatever. You're able to free a character or destroy an Imperial atrocity unit. Well, you have to know the atrocity unit's there, which you will know if you take out if you take control of the IPOC, which I didn't do in this game. Otherwise, you can get rid of one that's active, but for the planetary stabilizer, you really have to have it visible. Scavenge for possessions, that's always kind of cool. The problem is, there's a risk that you're going to get a spaceship which you don't need, maybe, or a companion that you don't have a chair for on your spaceship. So you have to kind of have in mind, well, how safe am I doing that? Do I really want to? A lot of times, it's your spare activity. You sometimes have a larger group, you can do one activity with it, and then you come up with, well, I don't know what else to do. Gather information for the Rebels is cool because it allows you to discover secrets. It also allows you to peek at some of their units if on the lesser valued one. But Start Stop Rebellion, obviously you need to do that. Sabotage, every now and then, again, a secondary mission to try to bring a PDB down especially. And then of course Subvert Troops, which you can use on the weaker, the non-elite units, and not even veterans. You can only do this to the Imperial stuff. And the goal here is to turn a troop to your side. And that's kind of cool, actually. But again, I don't see it much because the way I like to play the Imperials. I like to play the Imperials with the intention of wiping the Rebel characters out. That's usually a successful strategy. That's always been a successful strategy for me. But it's also, I think, stronger than anything you can do. You know, the variant I have talks about all this. Oh, well, yeah, you want to prevent, you know, with the rules as written, you don't want to put your PDBs up because that means the planet gets captured more easily. You know, honestly, after having played it with the option in place and having played it before without it, I'm cool with putting those PDBs up. If a rebellion happens, hey, too bad, you know. I'm not too worried about rebel control here. That's not that big a deal. All rebel control is useful for is the end of the game conditions. Okay, you don't really want to hand the PDB over to the rebels because then it makes it a little harder to attack. But it's a lot more important to be interdicting rebel characters. So I don't even think the rules as written are terribly damaging them. So I talked a little bit about the map. You get this little thing, which is kind of cool. A little map extension, really, but it's kind of nice that it's loose from the map because, well, you can put it where it fits. If you don't have a huge long table or whatever, that works for you. Counters, pretty standard. You know, SPI quality counters. Actually, these are the Avalon Hill ones, so they're a little glossy, which is a shame, but whatever. The cards, again, you see my action cards are really damaged. I should sleeve them, but I hate shuffling sleeved cards. But those guys are getting a little worn out there. This is not, you know, your poker quality cards. These are, you have these big sheets of cards, you perforate it and you fold it and tear them off. And, well, not the most sturdy material to make. The rule book itself, there's some cute little points in it, but you know, it's your standard SPI rulebook. It's fairly detailed and thick. One problem, there's at least one rule that gets retracted. It works in the star system game, but then gets pulled out when you're playing the later games. But otherwise, I think it's pretty good. I like SPI style rules. I'm comfortable with them. I learn well from them, I guess. But there are some things that are a little iffy about it, and one of the reasons I don't really like reading these rules is that I kind of forget about them. Some kind of wanky stuff going on in terms of like interception in the space boxes and stuff. And I would rather just look it up because I'm never going to remember it all during play anyhow. You've got your standard character sheet where you record your hits, and you've got the Galactic Guide, which is kind of a pain in the butt flipping through constantly to get things. Anyway, overall, you know, this isn't one that I've ever worked too hard at, not just in terms of trying to figure out how to win with the rebels. Because for me, it was sort of this story game, and that's why I don't like games where I have to figure too hard. What I love about this is this broad story game. I almost feel like I could tweak it a little bit. I'm not quite sure how. The most obvious thing that I'd like to play with a little on it is I'd like to be able to change the odds of the missions succeeding. Well, you can't do that when you have these cards. However, using the chits, I could maybe tinker with those numbers a little more easily, and maybe make things just a tiny bit easier for the rebels. But again, then it would, especially if I did what I expected, it would become even more valuable maybe to throw things into rebellion early. The risk to doing that is kind of the, okay, well, what if I'm wasting my time doing that? What if I'm not gaining, the best spaceship or the best whatever this way? But yeah, overall, I feel like I'd have a better shot at this point if I set it up and started playing again of getting the rebels through. And that's kind of how I remember the last couple times I played, is this feeling of, oh, well, maybe I'll remember next time what to try. Because the rules do definitely throw you into this, they kind of let you know you don't want to just do diplomacy, start rebellion type mission sequences there. You want to do all kinds of other stuff is what they imply. And the game almost just begs for you to explore all these different missions. And the truth of the matter is, that definitely doesn't work. Yet, towards the end of the game, when I give that up, when I start going for the diplomacy only, trying to get those domino effects, trying to sweep a bunch of planets over at once, that often seems a little bit more promising. If that was done early in the game, before the Imperials have enough navy to, just slap down and make it really hard to get off the planet after you throw it in rebellion, well, then maybe you could kind of throw the Imperium off balance enough, make it so that they're getting low enough taxation that it's hard for them to really defend their planets. Eventually they'll get knocked down to a level where they can defend a few core planets, key places that are vital to them. But other than that, yeah, the Imperial income, their starting position is very weak. The rebels start out reasonably strong. You can actually count on the rebel forces getting weaker over time as they get intercepted and taken out. But with the Imperial forces, they're at their weakest, I think. So that's the point at which a rebellion starting to work might be the most likely to kind of send the Imperials into a spiral of no good, So, yeah, every time I walk away from this game, I walk away wondering, well, was there a chance? And that's the kind of thinking that makes me set up, say, a game of La Révolution Française, which I love, and play it again immediately. That, oh man, it didn't work out the way I expected. Let me try again. But the problem with this, and it's not just the length, there's a fatigue that sets in. And it's something similar with another Butterfield game, Voyage of the Pandora, where you have a limited number of paragraphs and they start coming up again. And here, the monsters invariably come up again if you stay on the same planets. You kind of see the same kind of thing also with Tales of the Arabian Nights, where if you start playing too much, but that's got a nice thick book of paragraphs, so quite often you see a lot of new stuff. Here, you start not seeing new stuff, but you're constantly flipping through that player guide, the Galactic Guide, trying to look up, oh, what's up with this? What's up with this? What did I find? What hit me? So there's another piece of information the Rebel kind of needs to know to operate, to optimize his behavior is, oh, what monsters might I face here? What kind of, indigenous people might try to kill me? How big a group do I need to feel safe? And that's one thing. You start splitting your groups too small and you start losing all the pieces. Then there's the simple fact that I almost always play with the rules a little wrong on this. So, for example, the fact that an action event can only happen once on each planet in each turn. So when you're drawing for it, once it happens, say you get attacked by the natives, they're not going to attack you again. And I think I've often lost groups to that. We barely got away from this. Oh no, there's more. So, you know, my whole view of kind of how tainted the balance is may be really off kilter here. However, I do go back to the fact that I'm not the only person who thinks that it's tainted, that the rebels have a tough job winning. But a lot of people seem to think give the rebels more time and they should win, which leads me to believe A, people probably are playing by the rules. That's not an unreasonable assumption, right? But B, that they're probably also optimizing better than I want to do. I don't want to spend that kind of thought and energy to figure out what my moves are. This is, you know, it's space opera. I don't mind the detail and the depth of the rules, for the most part. But there are places, there are certainly places where some of those rules are just, I leave them over there and I'll come look at them if I need them, maybe. But a game of this, you know, richness really needs that kind of rule set, I think. I don't think there's a way to provide the amount of different things you can do, and this cross between like this military game that's actually kind of an interesting game, even though it's an I go, you go type format. There is a lot of interactive interception type abilities in it that I didn't really go into too much detail on, because they tend to be limited interceptions. So for example, you create an interception stack in space, the enemy flies through your space. Well, you can intercept that enemy and force him to fight, and you kind of stop him there. But if you use all your forces for that, then he can fly his next stack through with no problem. I don't know. I enjoy the level of thinking that I do in the game. I enjoy, wow, I really should go try to get the domino effect now. If I could sweep a bunch of planets, that would be cool. But I don't want to take it any further. That's too much thinking for me. I don't like that. I'm not grasping it in the intuitive sense that I like to grasp in most games. And certainly I feel like something like the OCS, the Operational Combat System, is as complex in the interaction of all the rules, but I can make from the seat of my pants type decision that works pretty well in that. Just looking at the board position and having a feel for what's going on. There may be places where when you zoom in on the hex grid you have to kind of be more careful. But you don't have that hex grid here. You have the universe here. You have everything, and you have to know everything about everything. You can't just zoom in to the level of detail you need to do a little tactical operation and then jump back and use broad strokes for the other sides. It's that you have to optimize on the detailed level across, you know, the whole Imperial core there. And that's just not appealing to me. However, you know, the storyline that's here, the type of game it is, the depth to which it tries to capture that, that's all so impressive to me that I like it even if I don't like what I think I might have to do well at it. So I'd rather tinker with the cards, you know, maybe use the chits and add a few successes to each one, for each mission to the deck. That's going to be hard to tweak with, though. You know, it's not like a lot of other games where you can just go in and tinker something like fairly easily. So I kind of want to put it off and let my OCD just say, well, I'll do this again and again the way it is, and always be disappointed, but be so impressed at the same time that it's not that terrible a thing that I'm disappointed with the balance, with the way it kind of bogs down at the end. And it may not bog down that much if it turns into a full-out military insurrection. I've never gotten there. This is the closest I think I've ever gotten, to tell you the truth, with a few planets in rebellion at the same time. Alright, up it goes. Hope you enjoyed.